What is up, everyone? Today we are doing a book haul video, which is very awesome, very fun. I have not done one of these in far too long, so I have a lot of books to talk about. Hopefully, this video doesn't go too long and I don't have to break it up into multiple videos or anything like that. And some of these books I've already read because, again, it's been so long, but I will just kind of briefly go over the ones that I've already read so I don't bore people with details or anything. First, my September Discord buddy read, The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. Kate and I read this, and, well, Kate's still reading it, actually. She's being a doctor and, doing med school things. But we will be doing a live show for this book. But I very much enjoyed it. It has the classic fantasy feel to it. It's got, the 3-act structure. It's got kind of a chosen one, I guess you could say. But the way it's written is very good. And some of the classic fantasy tropes are flipped around a bit, and it gives it a very fresh feeling. So yeah, I really liked this book, and I'd recommend it to anyone who likes those longer classic fantasy stories. And I know it's the first in a series, but it actually reads pretty well as a standalone. But I know some of you all out there want to get completed series done. So yeah, the next book in this series, I don't think it'll be out for quite some time. So yeah. Anyway, speaking of classic fantasy, up next we've got Wheel of Time books. I've read the first and the second one at this point, and I've got to read the third one, but procrastination. Eye of the World for me was pretty boring. The Great Hunt was a bit faster paced, and I liked The Great Hunt quite a bit more, and I like the ending to Eye of the World quite a bit too. So I have hope for the series. We'll see, though. I'm definitely going to give it a couple more books, I think, at the very least, and then we'll try to keep up with my one book a month pace, and we might just do a catch-up month in January, because this is another thing I'm buddy reading in my Discord. And yeah, some people may need a little month to catch up, and by some people I mean me. But yeah, these are, again, if you like classic epic fantasy, very awesome. Also, the way I'm going to do this book haul is we're going to be talking about all the fantasy books first and then the nonfiction books at the end. So yeah, up next we've got Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. And this is a book that I hear a lot of good things about. Basically, there's this evil empire monarchy type situation, and it gets overthrown. There's a revolution. And then the new administration is also very bad, very authoritarian. Maybe not a monarchy, but bad things happen. And yeah, there's dragons, which is cool. And this book follows two sisters who have different worldviews in terms of this political situation. And that's pretty much the extent of what I know about this book. But I think I'll like it. It's based around the Russian Revolution, which is interesting, and not the only time in this video that I will be talking about the Russian Revolution. So yeah, I really want to get to this one. Even though I hear it's YA, I think a lot of the themes are pretty high level, pretty adult, quite frankly. And that's why I read books a lot of times, for the very interesting and usually complex themes. Or maybe not complex, maybe thought-provoking is a better word. Complex, I'm so complex. I don't know why I felt obnoxious when I said complex. All right, anyway, moving along from Blood and Ash. Yeah, this book has a lot of fantasy and a lot of smut, or romance, very spicy romance, I'm told. I haven't read the book, but a lot of my friends want me to read this book because I don't know, well, maybe they want to see my reaction to reading smut, and I think it'll be fun. And a lot of people want to read this with me because they probably think it'll be fun to go through this book with me and see my reactions. And yeah, this is probably a bit more spicy in terms of the romance than anything else I've read this year, quite frankly. But yeah, this is one of those books that even if I don't love the book itself, I think I'll love the experience reading it because of all of my community, my Discord, etc. You guys are all great, and I'm sure we can share some good laughs about this book. And yeah, subscribe to my channel so I can read this book more quickly. It would make at least 30 people in my Discord very happy if you subscribe to my channel. So don't do it for me, do it for them. Up next, we've got Jade City, which I have read, and Jade War, which I will be reading in November. This is like an impromptu buddy read that happened in my Discord, and people are very excited for Jade Legacy, which is the third book in this trilogy, coming out in December. After reading book 1, I am now on that hype train as well. Very excited. This was a very solid book. I think this was definitely a 5-star read for me. Just so many good things in terms of the political intrigue, which, you know, if you guys have been following me, you know I love the political intrigue. It's like a mafia story in like maybe 70s Japan. Maybe that's the level of technology we have. It's not like actually Japan. It's like, you know, fantasy Japan. And it's just so fun. I love it. Jade War as well. This is book 2, so I look forward to getting to this like on November 1st. I think I'll pick it up because that's how excited I am to continue on with the series. All right, next we've got The Grace of Kings, and I actually don't know too much about this book. Actually, it kind of gives me Fireborn or Flamefall vibes, whatever the Rosaria Munda book I was talking about earlier. But instead, I believe it's 2 brothers, and there's like a revolution going on and like a bunch of fantasy stuff. And yeah, I don't really know anything else about this book, but it is the November buddy read that I'm reading with Jolene Reads. So that should be funny. It'll be fun, and there will be a fun live show, and we'll just talk about it and yeah, everything. Up next is a kind of similar thing. Orconomics, which I have read, and Son of a Lich. So Orconomics I read. I love this book. This is like probably my 3rd or maybe 2nd fantasy favorite of the year. It's just so good. So good. The satire, the comedy, the story itself as well. I just love it all. I did a dedicated review to this book. And then here's book 2. It looks like it's like twice as long. Look at that. But I'm very excited to get to this. I'll probably hang out for a bit, read this early to mid next year in preparation for the 3rd book coming out sometime next year. If you have not read Orconomics, I would recommend it because it's just so good. It tickles all of my funny bones in the best way, and it pulls on the actual heartstrings too. Like I'm trying to think, like, what is a stand-up comedy routine? Actually, you know what? Click. When I watched Click, and I know Click's probably not a good movie and maybe it doesn't hold up, but when I was a kid, like, that movie made me laugh and pulled on the heartstrings. And like, this is like the first experience that I've had since watching that movie that has given me like both those things in large quantities. Like, it probably focuses on the comedy, but like the story itself, also phenomenal. And I actually kind of wonder, like, in terms of larger concepts and talking about them and like pretty strong allegories towards the real world and pretty explicit allegories in a lot of ways, I feel like this is almost an introduction to political satire as seen through fantasy books. And I know Terry Pratchett did this, I know, but this could be like kind of a renaissance of that particular genre. I don't know if it'll happen or not. I know Kings of the Wild tried to do this as well. I've not read Kings of the Wild, but maybe this is like the Jon Stewart moment of political satire, but instead in fantasy books. Next, we've got another one where I've read the first book in the series, and this one I'm in the middle of the second book. First book, again, top 3 books of the year for The Black Coast by Mike Brooks. This dude's going to be an auto-buy author for me, I think, even though this after one book, he's an auto-buy author. But then The Splinter King, I'll be honest, this book has started a bit slower for me, and I haven't loved The Splinter King as much. There's maybe a few too many perspectives in The Splinter King, and some of the characters who I love, like some of my favorite characters, are in this first book. We're getting to see less of them in the second book. So to be determined with the series as a whole, but I think even if like the series goes not well and in directions that I don't like, I think this first book can be read as a standalone by anyone, and I think they would get quite a bit of enjoyment from it. There's a few weird quirks in this series where quirks Quirks. This man thinks the lack of use of pronouns might be difficult for some readers, but this man believes in your ability to understand this text, and this man believes that you can understand this fully. So, yes, anyway, read Mike Brooks, read The Black Coast, and To Be Determined on The Splinter King. Check out my wrap-up later this month, and that is when it will be determined. Up next, Brandon Sanderson, Legion. This is my book of the month of October, which I have not read yet, but Pete from Ponderings of Pete and I are reading this, and he's read it already, so I clearly have to catch up. But these are a few short stories by Brandon Sanderson that follow around a guy who has weird mental things going on, and I forget what is even in this book or what this book's about. Yeah, I mean, it's by Brandon Sanderson, so I've got to read it, right? This is definitely a Sanderson book that is not one of his most talked about, but because I like Sanderson more than just about anyone, and I'm one of the #1 Sanderson shills on booktube, I think I have to read this. I've been forgetting to say where and when I've gotten these books, but yeah, this was a gift from Lyra. I know I said I didn't want presents, but then someone pulled up a message from a while ago of me being like, yeah, presents are great. And so then some people got me presents, and Lyra, the #1 Bulbasaur stan, other than myself, of course, bought me Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. And I read the Divine Cities trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I really like the third book in that series. The first 2 books were solid. There were parts I liked, parts I didn't like, but the third book pulled it together in a way that gave me promise for Robert Jackson Bennett's future writings and made me want to read more of him. Also, that series kind of focuses on insiders, very powerful and influential people within society. And this book, I believe it focuses on miners or lower class, blue collar folks, which is definitely more my style in terms of who I have interest following, and we'll get to that in a moment with another series. But yeah, so I like that kind of theme more. I think I like the characters more in here, and I hear good things about this magic system. Basically, you can program things to do what you want them to do, or at least that's my understanding. So that's very cool, very exciting, and I'm gonna like Foundry Side, I think, but we will see. I have no idea when I'm getting to this book either. All right, and then next, Lower Class Miners, Red Rising. I loved Red Rising. It was very good. I think I'm going to continue liking this series. These were a gift from Charmaine, so thank you, Charmaine. That was very nice of you. I am super excited to continue on with these series, and I hear that after reading book 2, you'll immediately want to jump into book 3. Maybe in late November, I will get to these, and it should be a bunch of... And I have so many conspiracies after reading the first book. I've got to put them in my Discord. There's a Red Rising channel, and you guys can read them. Don't spoil anything for me, but you can laugh along, and I think they're pretty funny. Hopefully, we'll see. I could be very wrong. I think I'm at least 10% right, maybe 5% right. I don't know. I don't think I'm 100% wrong. That's what I'm saying, I guess. But we will see. Also, I've got to put these down because holding 5 books is very awkward. All right, next, I got a few used books from various places. These were from my friend Kate, and, she got very nice copies of these Robin Hobb Realm of the Elderling books. So she gave me her old one, so that was very nice. Assassin's Apprentice is the first one, and I have not read any Robin Hobb, guys. How can I be considered a fantasy fan if I have not read any Robin Hobb? But in 2022, in my Discord, we'll be talking about all these. Hobb 2022, hashtag Anitha, my friend, will be doing live shows for a lot of these books, and I'll be a part of at least some of them, and she'll be in my Discord talking about them, and it'll just be great. Maybe 1 book a month, maybe not. It'll probably be 1 book a month. That's probably pretty reasonable. Especially the first book is pretty thin, which is nice, but then I think the series gets to have chunkier books, which, is fine. Also, look at these covers. It's just very old school. And then this one. Also, people love fits. People say you should not get attached to characters in these books. So, I'm assuming some people and or animal companions die throughout the series, so I'm looking forward to these heartstrings getting pulled on. My poor little heart. I'm not sure how many of these emotional fantasy books I can take, but I will continue doing it because it is my drug, I guess, for lack of a better term. Next, we've got The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks, and I read the Lightbringer series, which has 5 books in it, and I really liked it. Actually, book 1 was my first book review on booktube. It was a couple of years ago at this point, but I just, these books made me be like, oh, there's more worlds out there. There's more fantasy to read. And I knew there was more fantasy, but I was pretty basic. I had read Harry Potter and stuff before 2019, and I tried a few other fantasies, and I had read a lot of Star Wars books. But, this was the first huge world that I really dove into. I read the first 3 books very quickly, and yeah, I just love his work here. So that's why I had to get The Way of Shadows. And I know this is another assassin story, and I have no idea when I'm going to get to this. I hear this is maybe a little bit younger in tone than the Lightbringer series, but I think I'll have fun with it, and we'll see. If I feel like I want to read books about assassins, I've got this, and hopefully I'll like it. Up next, look at what I got used at a bookstore. Oh man, hardcovers of the novelizations of the first 3 movies. And man, these are just so nice. I love them so much. Look, we've got Padme. We've got Attack of the Clones. Boom. Just so cool. Revenge of the Sith. Darth Vader. Boom. Oh man, these movies, and they were my childhood, and I've never actually read the novelizations for them, so I think it'll be interesting. I hear very good things about the 3rd one. Also, the authors for these. Terry Brooks wrote this one, R.A. Salvador wrote the 2nd one, and then Matthew Stover wrote the 3rd one, who I don't know anything about, but these 2 other ones, I've heard their names, and they're or at least they were very prolific fantasy authors. I mean, they still probably are. Is Terry Brooks still writing? I think he is. I've never actually read any of these authors, though, so it might be a cool way to dip your toe in. Maybe it isn't, though. Maybe they have different styles in these. Let me know in the comments below, because I just don't know anything. Again, I have no idea when I'll get to these, but it's good to have, and they're very pretty. Look at these spines. And then speaking of Star Wars books, boom, The High Republic. This started earlier this year, actually, and The High Republic took place 200 years before the episode 1. So a lot of different characters that we're not used to. Yoda's around, of course, but everyone else not so much. And yeah, it's basically a new time in the Star Wars expanded universe that we don't really know too much about. I mean, we know the Republic is in power of the galaxy, or at least large swaths of the galaxy. So that's pretty cool. And I like stories that involve the Jedi Council. And yeah, I don't know what I'll think about this book. I've heard kind of mixed reviews, but might as well get into the High Republic, see what it's all about, see if I like it. Maybe I won't like it, but I hope I like it. Another used bookstore purchase, Democracy Now! This is a news channel that I watch sometimes, and this has a bunch of stories from, their experiences doing journalism and stuff. So I think it'll be cool to read about. There's been a lot of interesting things to cover if you're Democracy Now! The 2 things that I know about that stick out the most in my mind was, once Bill Clinton was, promoting elections in the year 2000, so obviously he wanted people to vote for Hillary Clinton in New York, and he wanted people to vote for Bob Menendez in New Jersey, or someone. There were two like Senate elections, and so he was telling people to vote on New York City radio shows, and he called into Democracy Now! Now, Democracy Now! Is very left-wing, especially for that time, because, there wasn't like too many like left-wing outlets, like NPR, maybe like center left, but Democracy Now! Is definitely further left than NPR, and they're very principled in terms of not being partisan Democrats. So if Bill Clinton did something that was unsavory for, I don't know, people with consciences, I don't know. If Clinton was doing things that were not great, Democracy Now! Would definitely call them out. So, Bill Clinton calls into the show, and he's planning on a very softball interview, and he gets absolutely roasted in terms of, these questions. Like, when he was governor of Arkansas, he sentenced to death a very, like, mentally handicapped person. And, like, that story is, like, really disturbing if you look into it. I believe that guy asked the prisoner, or like the guards or whatever, to box up his food so he could eat it tomorrow morning, and this was like on the day of his execution. So that was the level of not knowing what was going on that guy was in. But Democrats at that time had to posture as being like very tough on crime, so, or that's what they politically felt like they had to do. So they did things like that, and obviously they felt like they had to do that because Republicans did all that crap too. So yeah, that was very interesting. And there was also the coverage of the 2012 RNC, I believe, where the journalists for Democracy Now! Were assaulted by Minneapolis police officers. So interesting historical foreshadowing there. Yeah, just like horrible suppression of journalists. And yeah, definitely something that I would like to just read in my spare time, and just, very good journalism going on. So check that out. Democracy Now!, they have a YouTube channel, they have a website. It's like a good alternative. Certainly if you're on the left. They have like a very calm delivery too, which I like a lot. If you haven't noticed, I have a calm delivery as well. I think part of the reason is because I like consuming content that has a fairly calm delivery a lot of times. So that's why I think I personally have that sort of calm delivery as well. Anyway, all right, Color of Law. This is the Baltimore housing discrimination book. That's probably what it's most known for. Just covering things like redlining and, like how loans were given out to people in Baltimore and maybe some other cities as well. And yeah, I hear great things about this book in terms of just outlining how housing discrimination happens within our country and how it often goes along race lines. Also, this is the book that ContraPoints talks about in one of her videos. It's like one of the first things she references in a video. So I'll figure out which video it is and link that in the description, because ContraPoints has good content. Oh no, I don't want to talk about these. No. But I do want to talk about these. Boom. All right. So these two books, gifts from Potato Brarian, who is a mod in my Discord, and she is very snarky, very hilarious, always willing to dunk on me, which is great. And this is a book that I mentioned in a video of nonfiction books that I want to read. So she got me this as a gift, and another book by the same author. So The Open Veins of Latin America is the one I wanted to read, and then the Book of Embraces by Eduardo Gallendo. But yeah, it talks about like South America and, how the global north has tried to take their natural resources and kind of exploit them for their labor and their resources, and and how it's kind of just devastated areas, countries. So these should be very interesting to read, and hopefully I enjoy them. This next book was a gift from Evie. She gave this to me after we interviewed Josiah Bancroft on the Library of Alexandria's channel, and the reason she gave me this book of poetry is because there is a poem called Senlin Ascends in here or something, or in the poem it says like the word Senlin Ascends, and Josiah Bancroft mentioned that, and Josiah Bancroft is a big fan of poetry, so it's very interesting that he got a lot of his inspiration from older poetry, and I just don't know very much about poetry at all, but it sounds nice sometimes, so this was very nice of Evie to get this, and I'll read some of it at some point, I'm sure. Even though I'm not a huge poetry fan, it should be fun, and it is a very memorable time, because that was my first author interview, even though it was like a team interview, I guess, but, Evie, Alan, Chase, and I experienced that together, and it was awesome and very kind of Josiah Bancroft to give his time to us so we can ask him ridiculous questions about various ridiculous things, and some serious questions about Senlin Ascends and the rest of the Books of Babel series, which, the Hod King favorite book of the year, so, awesome. And the Fall of Babel coming out in under 2 weeks, I think. Very exciting. Oh, wait. Did I talk about this in my last book haul? I don't even remember. But An Indigenous People's History of the United States. I've talked about this book in various videos, so I won't talk about it too much. But I'm reading it now and talking about it in my Discord, so you guys should join my Discord if you have not already. I feel like I've plugged my Discord quite a bit, haven't I? All right, here we go. Gulag Archipelago. I've read this one, and we had a live discussion on Ponderings of Pete's channel, and then the next 2 huge volumes I have not read. Would I recommend reading these? The short answer is no, and it's kind of complicated. Do I really want to get into it now? Can I outline this in a minute or less? Well, basically, I kind of thought this would read sort of like a history/memoir sort of thing, and in some parts it does. However, I feel like it was a political manifesto, and not like fully a manifesto, but it certainly is against the Soviet Union and gulags and all that sort of stuff, which is fine. I'm against the Soviet Union. I am against Marxist Leninism. But, when you're in the Soviet Union and you want to push people to possibly view the world as a place that could be better, at like your country, it could be a better place. When doing that, you have 2 options, pretty much. You can propose a vision of the future that you like and you think is good. Or you can kind of be a little bit more reactionary, and you can look to the past and pull a sort of vision of Tsarist Russia, which was who had power prior to Lenin and Stalin, and you can say, this is what it was like then. Now, Tsarist Russia was horrible. So to kind of do that reactionary view of Russia, you kind of have to whitewash some things, and that's what happened in this book quite a bit, and that's a lot of why I wouldn't recommend it. Certainly not as like a history book. And it's not really a memoir either, because he doesn't talk about his like experiences too much. If it was a memoir, it really needed to be edited, right? Look at all this. So yeah, it wasn't a good history book because it says some false things, or leads people to believe incorrect things about Tsarist Russia. And I guess if you want to just get the vibes of someone who's very anti-establishment in 1970 Russia, in the Soviet Union, then, maybe you could read this. But I will say, if you're reading nonfiction books that are 1,500 pages, actually, this is like 1,800 pages altogether, I would recommend just like anything else, you'll get way more of a bang for your buck. Like the new Jim Crow talks about prisons in the United States over the last century or whatever. So that's a good read. I'd recommend. If you're interested in the propaganda angle of the Soviet Union, maybe Manufacturing Consent, which talks about the propaganda model in the West, which is a bit more subtle and a bit more complex, the Soviet Union, where it was a lot more basic. It was like, if you say anything bad about the state here, gulag. But in the West, definitely way more subtle than that. Also, if the memoir angle interests you, Night by Elie Wiesel. This is in Nazi Germany, so that is obviously not the same as Russia. None of the books I'm recommending are about Russia, really, and I'm not like a Russian scholar, so I can't really recommend books on Russia specifically that you can read instead of these. So I'm sorry about that, but yeah, if you want to read about the concepts, I think the books that I've shown are great. You'll gain more value, especially per page, with those books than these books. Oh, lastly, the shock doctrine. This is a little bit all over the place, but it covers a lot of the things in the Gulag Archipelago in a more concise way, and it talks about more countries than just Russia, the shock doctrine does, but it talks about, like, really a lot of the same things, like torture is talked about early on in here, exploitation is talked about in here, rollbacks on freedom of speech in various countries is talked about in the shock doctrine. Obviously, this is a more leftist take on a lot of those issues rather than a reactionary take as presented in the Gulag Archipelago. But, yeah. Anyway, speaking of reactionary, Jesus. Guys, when you have a birthday and you have friends that are trolls... Actually, wait, one second. So, look. Last year, my friend got me a block of wood for my birthday. So this year rolls around. I don't have high expectations, but he shows up and he has a wrapped present, and it appears to be a book. And I'm like, nah, Steve, you aren't giving me a serious present here. Is this just a different shaped block of wood? But no, it was a book. It is a book. It is a very troll book to give to a person such as myself. Oh man, I read the back of this book and I already have like brain damage. But Ben Shapiro, How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps. Definitely not an alarmist title at all. Also, I noticed that this book is like just over 200 pages. So I felt like Ben Shapiro was just like, oh, like this publisher has a page requirement of 200 for me, so I better just reach that and be done. But yeah, I don't know. I know some people would want me to read this as like a troll, just because people enjoy seeing me suffer. I think I would have to write like 200 pages of my own just to respond to all the nonsense thrown out in this book. And you may be like, oh, Greg, you're being like unfair to Ben Shapiro or whatever. Look, I'm an open person. I'll hear you out. My Discord has a section for respectful debate if you want to talk. I talk about politics. I have disagreements with people. Gulag Archipelago, I've had disagreements with Pete and Christy on, and various other people in my Discord. And like, look, they're respectful. I'm not into this canceling people over political disagreements. I've been on the other end of that, certainly, for a respectful disagreement back in the day. But yeah, I don't think it gets me anywhere. So yeah, I mean, if you want to like say like you're treating Ben Shapiro unfairly, join my Discord. Generally, when I read Ben Shapiro, I find that his arguments and political prescriptions lack facts and logic, which, very sad, very sad. He seems to be in like his own reality a lot of the time. And if you don't know who Ben Shapiro is, there's a BBC interview with him. I think that's very telling. The interviewer is very conservative too, and geez, he does not come out looking great in that interview at all. That is all of the books I've hauled. Actually, You know what? I've got to do a thumbnail. And now, let's see if this works. Come on, we gotta use this thumbnail. This is incredible. How am I holding all these?